It should be for the same.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, any other issues from the action log? No? I take you back now to the minutes, draft minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of January. Are there any matters arising that you wish to raise that are not covered by the action log or not on today's agenda? None? Okay, Joe O'Gall, thank you. I'd like to invite Brogan to give us her presentation, please.
I'd like to introduce you all to the programme. The programme actually joined us and in the healthcare science programme, actually as a clinical lead. And I think actually what we want to do is share the journey that she's been on and actually effectively the outcomes of actually what she's delivered as a result of it and her experience and through that as well. On to you, Brogan.
Hello everyone. I'll do this without the slides, but so I'm able to talk about my secondment with HEIW as clinical lead for research and innovation for healthcare science. Before starting the role, I come from a background in neurophysiology, so I'm involved in looking at the function of the brain and peripheral nerves with 3 main diagnostic tests. It's EEG, which is looking at the electrical activity of the brain, things like epilepsy and seizures, nerve conduction studies, which looks at the integrity of the peripheral nerves, the nerve entrapments, such as carpal tunnel syndrome, and the visual evocations, which looks at the whole visual pathway from the eyes to the visual cortex at the back of the brain, and for things like multiple sclerosis and neuritis. Next slide, thank you. Yes, so these are the 3 tests that I'm involved in. So before becoming a neurophysiologist, I actually did a undergraduate degree in biomedical science at Cardiff Metropolitan University, but I knew I wanted to be patient-facing, so eventually found myself in a trainee role in an University Health Board, and a little bit after a delay with COVID, became qualified in 2021, and then thanks to HEIW, actually I was able to go on and do the Masters in Advanced Practice. And that really gave me the confidence and the skill set to even consider a role as a clinical lead, which I was fortunate enough to get to in 2023. And since then, I've gone on to do a second year with yourselves, and then also become an advanced practitioner as well. So within the role, within 18 months, I've been talking and identifying stakeholders within the healthcare science profession, which covers 54 different professions in NHS Wales, and other key stakeholders such as Health and Care Research Wales and Commission and many others, and really identifying our engagement in research and innovation, landscaping what opportunities are available to us, and really unpicking the barriers we face. And this has all come together in a document that was literally released yesterday, which is the Research and Innovation Strategy for Healthcare Science. And it's a really exciting document for our profession. It's the first within Wales, but it's also the first across the UK. So we're really leading the space with this. And in the last stages of my secondment, I've been leading the work in the action plan and how to make those recommendations a reality. Lessons are too many to number, really, but on a professional point of view, I've really gained a deep understanding of the landscape of research and innovation, and how I can engage in that and overcome barriers and how to help others do the same. I've also understood a lot about working culture in the NHS and the differences between being in the frontline clinical settings to being in an environment like HEIW, and I'm really keen to take that back into practice. And also my professional identity. So I come from a very small profession in neurophysiology. I work with 3 other physiologists. There's 30 of us in the whole of Wales. So we're very small, and I suppose we feel very forgotten about sometimes. So it's been really lovely to have a national role and an impact, and really feel like I'm making a difference. And from that point of view, I've understood where neurophysiology fits in with the wider landscape of healthcare science, and then how that we also to NHS Wales as a whole, and the role that HEIW plays to support us. So my next steps really are just taking all of that back into my clinical role, to have a go at doing research myself and use that strategy as a springboard, to take that forward and bring those lessons and that culture back into the workforce. And I'm just honestly so grateful for the opportunity, and thank Sarah and colleagues enough for giving that opportunity and support in the first place. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Seems a shame just to let people in here. Because you're obviously enthused. Have you loved it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been everything I imagined it would be and more. And the things I've learned, I say professionally, personally, it's just been even today, just public speaking, being able to stand here is quite well.
Well, I think you're all right there.
Externally.
What could we do better? If there was anything you could have changed, what would it be?
It's a difficult one. It's hard to really answer that question, I suppose. From the being in the front line, I think we're so wrapped up in the day-to-day, and it's all about the patient in front of you. You don't see the wood from the trees quite a lot of the time. So it's having that connection. And I think we almost assume that everything's going to be done for us because we're busy on that front line. So I suppose it's just keeping those connections with the ground and having that. But I think that's already being done really well. Looking at the healthcare side of it, we've already got on networks to facilitate that. But it's just continuing that.
And we don't forget one, because we've got to keep in touch with all of our clinical leads that come in and go back out to do together. Never forgotten of it.
What's it been like for you?
Bwrd's been absolutely amazing from the very start, and a real, if you don't mind saying, diamond in the rough that we found with Bwrdd. I mean, when we took her on, she hadn't yet got her advanced practice role. But we saw in that interview process, what Bwrdd was able to achieve and the future that she would have. So I think, for me, it's early on to be involved, not just in to take their degree, but actually that may drive that they take back to the profession afterwards.
Go on.
No, I've got a question. Fascinating. Thank you for your presentation, and I agree with the chair. Thank you really well this morning. Just from a small question at the back out place, before you came to HEIW, what was your experience at HEIW? Did you know its functions? And do you think your colleagues would know what it is, what the room, what's the goal?
I'm certainly aware of HEIW because of being able to do the masters and the funding required. I don't think I realised just how much HEIW do. I think it was colleagues as well just assume it's purely education based and looking at a very high level, connecting universities and placements and those degree courses and things like that. But it's things like the culture team and the EPI and all this, even Welsh language and all of that. I had no idea that was that the HEIW did and brought to the workforce. So yeah, I've definitely got a better understanding now. It's just a drop in the ocean of what happened.
Well, reluctantly, I'm going to say we're going to have to move on, right? But can I thank you so much for bringing a bit of joy into this room? And it is a joyful thing. Thank you very much, and you're very well done. Make sure Mrs. Jones and Di Bach benefit from it out there. Right.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no.
Thank you.
think it's really good that we see the connection between all the stuff that we see coming through and actually the impact it can have on individuals and the care they can bring.
This is about actually working with the HEIW. I think it's a very different perspective. It's not just actually doing the training as Bwrdd described. It's about how they've come and worked with us and actually how she's now going to take back what she's going to do, what she learned back into that arena.
Okay. We're now moving on to agenda item 2.1, which is the thing I know you all wait with bated breath for, which is the chair's report. Well, the chair's report is what it is. I have to say that this is one of the most complex times that we're already in. The external environments are really changing. I have to say that having the remit letter and seeing the way that the organisation and the leadership has responded to creating an IMTP, I think has been extraordinary. And I would say that on behalf of the independent members, we're very grateful for the fact that we've been really involved in the way that the response and the paper has been created. The other thing I need to point out is that it's all about the economy, which is obvious. And we all know that that world has been turned upside down recently, globally, and it's not finished yet, perhaps. So statements made by the UK government will undoubtedly affect the allocation that Wales gets in for its services going, its responsibilities going forward. We're also heading towards an election in Wales next May. There's a huge focus on delivery across our NHS partners, our education, higher education partners, and our further education partners are also feeling the economic stress and strain. And the Cardiff University announcement of their consultation about the courses they provide is clearly brings it very close to home. So I think the one message I would bring from right at the beginning of this organisation, our ambition to be the best and most effective of partners has never been more important. And I think for our students, our trainees, and for the people who will be applying for courses in Wales to come into the NHS, it is really important that we provide that vibrant support and energy. I won't go on anymore, but I have to say that the NHS chairs that met yesterday, the day before yesterday, were really thrilled to hear the experience of the Denmark visit. And again, like we heard from that young lady, you go somewhere, you learn, you observe, and you take what you can back in and make it happen in your organisation or in your world. And what that does for leaders in development and leaders already leading is give that extra bit of energy and feeling together. And that was so obvious from that presentation, Alex. And the chairs were ambitious, see more of it, not less of it. So I think that was for me, that was directly taking what we do, what you have led, and what we have created right into where the main pressure is on actually delivering. I think that's really important. Finally, Alan comes in to the board, and that allows us to equilibrate some of the membership of the committees. So I'm asking you to approve the appointment of Alan as a member of the Audit and Assurance Committee from the 1st of April. And I'm suggesting that Dawn, that gives you the opportunity to focus in on the education commissioning and quality agenda. And thank you so much for your efforts on the audit committee and on the education. It makes it a much more even balance. And I'm sure there are a myriad of questions about my report, but I'll leave it to you. Okay. Thank you very much. Chief Exec's report.
They are. We've got people online. They can see I'm here now through Aaron's laptop and have been able to take presentation and your update. It's not to the quality that we usually provide, but people are seeing in live and we are recording for any issues as well.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Croeso. Okay, I move on to the Chief Exec's report.
Thank you, Chair. So the report has a number of items that will come to on the agenda later on, but just to pick up on a couple. You mentioned the leadership experience with Denmark, and that was a matter that we discussed at the National Cultural Leadership Succession Board, which is mentioned in my report. And again, similar appetite to really extract the learning and the lessons from other systems, particularly on some of those substantial issues like urgent and emergency care. And it's really pleasing to see that those lessons are actually being widely discussed now as part of how we're going to respond to next winter. So, an absolute direct impact on delivery. And from that conversation, we've also had a really positive discussion with Public Health Wales. We also have a lot of international links for various different reasons, but particularly in relation to the global health collaborative, to see how we can integrate leadership development opportunities into their work as well, and really sort of extend the reach through existing mechanisms really. So that's really positive. Yesterday we had the Wales Partnership Forum, which is the sort of tripartite structure that exists in Wales for social partnership within NHS Wales. And I know I don't often probably mention that enough, but we had two important items on the agenda yesterday in relation to the work on the management code of practice and competence framework, and also the staff survey. So, again, just I suppose to remind the board that we do actually play quite an important role in that social partnership context in terms of some of those strategic workforce issues. And there's a very positive response to both of those items for discussion yesterday. The conversation was focused much more on what we're going to do with this now. How do we implement it rather than actually what was being presented. So lots of positive support for that. And then one item that's not in the report was that we also had a really positive meeting with the Welsh Language Commissioner last week, Lisa, myself, and our new head of Welsh Language. Again, I think we've seen, it's the third Welsh Language Commissioner we've seen in our short life, isn't it? So, re-establishing connections and relationships and thinking about what that sort of joint agenda can do with the Welsh Language Commissioner, really, really positive meeting as well. So I think that was all I was going to say, other than to recognise Sian's team have been absolutely burning the midnight oil on the CODI platform, and working 7-day weeks in order to really get that to where it needs to be. And just wanted to recognise the sort of commitment and dedication from the team that's gone into that development, really, Sian. But I'm assuming you haven't waved any red flags in front of me that we're still on track.
Yeah, we're in the process of daily reporting now, and hour by hour, but at this moment in time, we are still progressing from that on Monday. So yeah, the team have worked exceptionally hard, and formally to thank them for all of their work and the additional effort they put into that. And I know we've talked about that from the board and the acting team, and they're very grateful for this.
Seeing that they're not going to sleep, how can they CODI?
No.
Because of the cards you play.
So that was all I was going to say, but I'm happy to take any questions or
Derek, how may I ask the note that you got with regards to the medical director appointment and key versus the board? Are we still on track with regards to advertising for April? I read that it's going through evaluation at the moment, but I'm presuming you're putting the pressure on to ensure that we keep to that timeline.
Yeah, we had a conversation with the person in Welsh Government who runs that service on the yesterday afternoon. So thanks.
Alex, can I just ask you, your report describes a massive within the organisation. The important thing is that we're looking at the staff. For me, recognising that the IMTP is one thing, but ministerial and cabinet secretary priorities may add in more work to this. I just think we all ought to be very grateful for the expertise and the energy that the organisation has to bring to its staff.
Absolutely, I think we'll come to some of this when we look at the staff survey later on, because there's obviously a real positive result there, but also some areas that we do need to keep an eye on and make sure that we are supporting people. And equally in the financial report that of the resource plan that accompanies next year's IMTP, you know, we do need to look at new ways of working. Because, you know, we are in a different financial context, but hopefully those will also add value in terms of how we might streamline how we work and take some of that sort of into staff at the same time. So, yeah, hopefully they can go with this.
Excellent. But can you say thank you to the staff on our behalf?
We will. We've got a staff forum tomorrow morning, and that'll be a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Right. No more questions for Alex? Right. So I'm now going to move on to the integrated medium-term plan, and we are being asked to approve the plan. And I have to say, Glyn, we are very grateful for the way we have been engaged on this.
Yes, very much. If I can just start by thanking the team. There's a very wide team that have been involved in different parts of producing the IMTP, but particularly to the planning authority team and Dorothy Edwards, who's sort of she's fitted in really well and really quickly in terms of helping us certainly strategically, I think, put the IMTP together. So I'm very grateful to that team, but also the wider teams across the organisation who have had to respond to various requests and have various discussions about how we produce an IMTP together for the next 3 years. This process has been quite different to previous years, and we started off back in the autumn talking about having more of a strategic approach to our IMTP, looking a little bit further ahead and looking at how HEIW can strategically achieve some of the shifts that we want to happen over a longer term period, and then using the IMTP to frame, so what is it that we're going to do next year and what are we going to do in the next 1 to 3 years. We had good feedback from stakeholders at the time, and I know as a board we had a really good discussion that I think gave us a strong steer on the importance of being focusing more on that strategic shift. And I think going back to a point that was made earlier about looking at the things that are within our gift as an organisation to do something about it to make progress. We then had the NHS planning framework that was circulated to NHS Wales back in December. That set out a lot of the cabinet secretary's priorities. And again, hopefully you'll see in reading the IMTP, we've looked very closely at those priorities. Again, a particular focus on how HEIW can support delivery next year within the NHS, in the way that we do and how we can support the wider system in achieving that. And then I guess the one thing that's particularly new for us in producing our IMTP this time round was having a remit letter from Welsh Government. I think the remit letter has been very helpful. We received that in February, and And I think it sets out very clearly some of the priorities that Welsh Government want us to pursue as a very clear action in terms of what we need to focus on next year. So going back to that point about delivery and supporting the NHS to deliver next year. So with that in mind, a lot of work has gone on in a fairly short period of time, I think, to produce the plan that you've got in the papers today. So it incorporates all of the feedback that I've described. It still has an eye on that sort of 5 years. So if you think about the health and social care workforce strategy that was produced for the 10-year period 2020 to 2030, the ITP aligns to those strategic themes in there. But actually, I think people will see that there's a strong focus on what we're going to do next year. And then there's also reference to what we would look to do over a 3-year period as well. We've also taken the opportunity in the ITP to not only talk about the areas of development or transformation that we want to take forward as part of achieving those priorities, but also to restate a lot of the core functions, the things that we do that are part of our statutory functions. We often describe them as business as usual, but actually they're really significant. So commissioning, education, and training. We talked about staff survey. These are things that are now in place and that we do as a matter of course. And we felt it was important that we included that in the ITP so that all stakeholders can see what we're doing as a matter of course, but also those development objectives that we've set ourselves that will hopefully make progress towards those strategic shifts. We've also included in there what we've called enabling objectives. And again, this is very much about those support functions that we've got in the organisation and how they contribute to delivering all of our objectives. So one that we often talk about is how we have better use and availability of data and digital analytics. That's becoming increasingly important. It's a real key enabling function to help us to integrate our ITP. Probably just another couple of points that I want to draw out. In terms of the financial assumption within the ITP, this year is probably going to be I'll come on to it later on the agenda. This is probably going to be the first year that we deliver a break-even position and have return funding to Welsh Government. That's something that's happened in previous years. This year will probably be that first year that we don't. Next year, I think, the financial context is even more challenging. So some of the economic challenges that the chair talked about, HEIW isn't immune from those. And so it's even more important that within our ITP, not only are we able to set a balanced financial plan, but actually one that enables us to deliver all of those priorities there. And in doing so, look to demonstrate the value and the benefits that actually all the work that we do can be seen across the NHS system and ultimately to deliver better patient care. So there are some key financial assumptions in the plan. Some of those relate to policy changes regarding Welsh Government. We've had confirmation from Welsh Government about how the financial risk will be managed on those. So again, I think we can confidently set out a balanced plan with those financial risks in there. We know the nature of what we do in terms of commissioning, education, and training, and wider workforce development can be volatile financially as well in here. So we know that there will be a range of financial risks that we'll need to manage during the course of the year. But again, I think we've got some reasonable actions to manage that as best as possible. And then I think the final area really, just to say, as part of the ITP, we will be developing we'll be revising our performance management framework. Again, we're hoping to have a session with the board in February and then bring that to the board formally in May. And again, that will be an opportunity to look at the ITP through a slightly different lens in terms of how do we demonstrate impact, how do we demonstrate value to the wider system, and use our revised framework to enable the board to get assurance on that, but also to be able to demonstrate to others that actually we're delivering that value to the NHS system. So that's a piece of work that we're doing now, which we hope to bring to the board in May. There are other enabling frameworks that you'll see within the ITP. So there's one around communication, engagement, which is also on the agenda for later. So I think there's lots that I probably can't cover today, and I feel like I'm not doing this justice. But actually, hopefully, people can see there's a lot in the ITP that we, subject to approval today, means that we're actually in a really good place as an organisation to take forward some of these strategic priorities. Hopefully, following approval today, we'll submit the ITP to Welsh Government by the end of March. And there is some follow-on work that we'll be doing internally to tie up some of the detail around implementation. So just again, thank you to everybody who's been involved. It's been a huge effort, but hopefully people can see that in the quality of the plan that's being presented today. So, pause. Any
Questions or comments?
Yeah, I was agree with you because it makes me so clear. And the work has gone into the plan is great. I suppose mine is one of that, like sort of what you just finished off, insurance around. We obviously in a very sort of economically challenged and complex market. And I know that in a plan you already stress test. I mean, I suppose what's the plan sort of to make sure there's stress testing this throughout to make sure it's realistic, especially when you touch upon the unit 2, where you can answer that. And I just was quite pleased to sort of see as well in the plan that we've got a vigil to be able to send out to the wider stakeholder. But I think it was a word of assurance around additional stress testing.
Yeah, so part of the work that we do and will be ongoing through the year is around financial forecasting. But I think more importantly, we've now developed working arrangements across the organisation that mean that we look at performance and finance a lot more closely. So the way that we work in the organisation, the business partners covering workforce, finance, planning, performance, and the budget holders work a lot more closely, so that actually we have those discussions through the organisation about actually what are the risks to delivery, what does that mean from a performance perspective, but also from a financial perspective. So through financial reporting and forecasting, I think we're able to get probably an earlier and better handle on how we think the financial position is likely to move. There are always going to be some risks that we can mitigate to a certain extent, but may not be able to control completely. And that's where perhaps in previous years we've seen under recruitment against our commissioning plans has meant that actually we generated a large surplus. I think going forward our plan is a lot tighter in terms of those assumptions. One of the things that we will also do as part of implementing this plan is look at some of those priorities and how we get assurance of an exec team as a board. So I think at the moment, most of the areas within the plan, we get assurance through ECQC, for instance, but there are probably some gaps in terms of the plan that we're presenting here, that we just need to go back and look at some of the meeting structures and groups that we've got in place to make sure that we're covering all of the areas, all of the priorities, so that we can provide assurance on all of them. So that some of that follow-on work will cover that.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. First of all, I think it's a really excellent document. Really do. It's easy to read, which I always find helpful. And it just says everything it should do. I think it's really well put together. I think just to focus on a couple of areas, but when you read the successes, the achievements, and I know we will, but I think for our staff to actually see what they've achieved, summarising that way is so important because it's a really impressive set of achievements. And I'm sure that will, feature in the communication video. The other thing, just to draw attention to, because I like pictures, page 25, that diagram on page 25, which just to me is such an excellent summary, strategic approach. And, for an independent member who sort of may have been asked, well, what is HEIW doing? I just wish I had a little copy that I just give out. I just think it really is an excellent, excellent graphic. So whoever designed that, thank you very much. It's really good. But the whole document, I think is impressive. Thank you for the opportunity to be involved in the stages of it and comments, etc. So yeah, I hope it's read with the same intent was to where it's going on main audience. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Good day. Yes, saying what Judith says, really, it's an excellent document from my perspective. It's clear. I like the style and the linkage between the strategic priorities and the development objectives and everything else in terms of really well. Just some background for those around the room. I've been involved in reviewing INCPs for a number of years, so I've read about 60 odd, probably about 5 cycles. And if this came in, I would think really good. So if I was in the room in Welsh Government, I'd be saying it's clearly approvable. That's to give you a reflection of my hat on, my old hat. It's a really good document.
Thank you.
I agree. I think it really needs all of us. This is an excellent document. And appreciate we've had an opportunity to see in its development that we should be commended for something that is so easy to take. And it's kind of this is an aside, and I think it's because of what we've just discussed about being in this different position. And HEIW, having been seen previously, that they're in a position that they've been able to turn these, and therefore, although we've had the remit letter, that at some point with all the churn and the changes, that we might start to get asked to do other things outside and it'll be in our direction. And I think just that, what those asks might be when we've got flexibility now. So, and I know the team will be doing that, but it's important that we may have to just say, no, can't be that. So I think that's just something, but absolutely ready to use it.
Well, just
I mean, I think it's really, really important. I think that's something we're going to stress in the cover letter that, we'd always like to meet people that say, yeah, we can help. We might not be able to do the whole, might be able to do some of it, but we want to help and we want to get into the problems. And we don't want to stop helping, but there is going to be inflexible and make sure we've got the resources available to take that way forward. And whereas previously we may have not been part of, some of the possibility that pop up things and proposals because we seem to be able to put through ourselves out. We need to make sure that our financial position is seen so that we are included in that and there's opportunities for extra resource so that we can help the rest of the system by having some of that resource going into the reports in a way that we didn't need to.
Jane has put a comment in and endorse the comments on the IMTP, very clear and well thought out with good alignment to priorities. I got 2 comments, Glenn. First of all, you go to the very helpful page 93, Pestle and Hour. Right? Because this document is so clear, right, I had time to actually read this. And if you go to the comment under environment, growing focus on sustainable working practices amongst the younger workforce. workforce. I think there's a very, very important element because we're going to have fewer younger as we have an aging population.
Yeah.
Sustainable working practices amongst the older. And that leads to much more experience being available to support the younger workforce going forward. So that, I just point that out. What I would say is that given the fact that we've got cabinet secretary priorities delineated in the remit letter, there will be more coming. So one of the things that I thought about that chart that you mentioned, it would be great if we could iterate some of this. It's because we do this, this happens. And when we make the choices that inevitably we will have to make against the priorities, unless they come future priorities in here, unless they come with funding, we will have to say, because you want us to do this, we will not be doing that, or we will be doing it at a different pace, and the consequences of it are these. So I think that Babcock sentence is really important, and it sort of brings together what you've already got. But I think that benefits analysis is more than a benefits analysis. It's actually saying this is the intelligence behind the choices we're making. I think that would be really useful if it was expressed up front somewhere. Not this is, this is a great piece of work, and I think it's so good we can build on this now. It's too clear. This is ice clear, right? This is ice clear, and the consequences of making choices have an impact on the service as well as the balance sheet. And that is where we are heading, all organizations, and that is proper, effective and efficient use of public money. Okay, so on that, if there are no more comments or questions.
So just pop it there, it's really important. Does this plan in its instance, uploaded onto the website for everybody to see? It's a very long document, and I don't know whether it's worth sort of giving some consideration from a sort of a stakeholder and comms to summarise that in a very nice visual document that just says the key asks. So somebody's not going to go through, but at least there is that on screen. Because I know you said a video. I just wondered if it was a quick downloadable, nice snazzy sort of brochure of just a couple of pages with your consideration.
And this is my 16th IMTP.
Can you remember them all?
I could probably have a very good stab because I could have a good stab, but can I just say it's the simplest, shortest, clearest.
No, but we do a summary. It's a good point. I think what we can't do is wait until it's approved to do the summary, because last year that was quite a long period of time. So I guess
not everybody's going to sit and read that.
What?
No, I feel so then some of they've already signed back a press release, which actually hits the website as opposed to the press, but that's all I have got a week.
So colleagues, I'm asking board members to approve the IMTP and the medium data set and the minimum data set for submission to Welsh Government. We note the content of the remit letter, and that will be subject to my discussions with the independent members in terms of their objectives this year. We look forward to the performance report development. And can I whether people who've been involved with this understand how grateful we are for the work that's being done. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glyn, the finance resource plan.
Yeah, so this really sort of follows on the IMTP. It's good that the board have approved it because it makes it a lot simpler. So one of the things that we're required to do as a board is to set a balanced revenue budget prior to the start of the financial year. That's set out in our standard financial instructions. So this paper is a fairly high level paper that just sets out the broad approach that we'll take to now setting detailed budgets, delegated budgets, and there'll be a budget setting paper with a bit more detail will come to the board in May, and that's the approach that we've taken for a number of years and seems to work quite well in terms of how we filter down the IMTP into individual budgets for people in the organisation. So the main areas that we look at in terms of setting a resource plan, people will be aware that most of the money that we spend, probably around about 315 out of 365 million, is on commissioning education training. So that's largely driven by the education training plan that was approved by the Cabinet Secretary back in January. We set the budgets very much based on what we know the historic commissioning rates or fill rates to be. We look at things like average costs of bursaries. Those are the things that drive the costs within that part of the plan in order to set that budget. The other, so about 50 million of our funding allocation then relates to staff that we employ, or typically contracts that we let to deliver programs of work. So within the IMTP, you'll see there are a number of other priorities and actions. So we talked earlier about the annual staff survey. We employ staff to coordinate that national survey. We also contract to have some of the data provided as well. So that's an example of where we use the IMTP to then get into the detailed budget setting. So the paper sets out the high-level assumptions that we use to set those budgets for both our pay budgets, which is employing staff, but also the services that we then commission or contract for, which sit within the non-pay budget. Again, we set out some of the financial risks within the resource plan, and we'll come back and probably visit these in a bit more detail when we set the budget with that board in May. But again, just to say that there are a range of risks. We've included in here the specific risks around Welsh Government policy changes. One of the things that we are looking at now is where we could deliver further efficiencies with the context of those efficiencies also making sense in terms of delivering value as well. So this goes back to some of the comments earlier about taking an opportunity to look at the ways that we work within HEIW across teams, but also how we can do things more sustainably that will contribute to our sustainability agenda, but also hopefully contribute to improving well-being with the staff that we've got as well. So we think there are some opportunities there where we can achieve better sustainability, improved ways of working, and actually deliver some of these financial efficiencies. And that's the work that we're going through at the moment. And we will be taking that through some of the internal groups and then we'll bring that back as part of the budget setting paper that comes to the board in May. But essentially, that's part of the financial assumptions that we will be making in terms of delivering a balanced financial plan and setting a balanced budget. So that's probably all I wanted to cover off in terms of this paper, but happy to take any questions.
John. Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, in terms of the section on risk, you don't know there or perceive potential risk associated with two elements of income, and that is anticipated Welsh Government funding and other income. So I'm presuming from that you don't see a risk that there's certainty around that income coming in. So if those aren't there, and of course the resource planning becomes imbalanced. And Am I right in that presumption?
Yeah, so our assessment of that, particularly the anticipated Welsh Government funding, is it's very low risk. So examples would be things like the Mental Health Workforce Plan. There's 3-year funding that's been agreed for that. Because it's fixed term funding, it wasn't agreed as part of the core allocation. Next year is year 3 of that 3-year allocation. So is based on informal conversation with Welsh Government policy leads, there's nothing to suggest that that funding is at risk. There's also a large element of that that relates to pay awards. So obviously, particularly with the staff, trainees that we commission education training for, we also incur the cost of pay awards there. So on the basis that Welsh Government's commitment at the moment is to honour the impact of any pay awards, again, we consider that to be very low risk in terms of that funding. The other income is it's relatively small, you can see with 365 million, but most of that relates to what's called an apprenticeship levy. So and some of our pharmacy trainees. So there's a correlation between that and spend. So actually, which would be receive less income, it's probably because we'd be employing fewer trainees to spend less than.
Any other questions or comments on this? In that case, then, I'm asking the board to approve the approach to establishing the 25-26 resource plan. I ask you to approve. I'm asking you to note the financial framework in the IMTP, which is the basis for setting the resource plan, to note the changes to the revenue resource limit, and to note and consider the key risks identified. You're happy? Thank you very much. Thank you, Glenn. Bill. Sian, communications engagement strategic framework.
Thank you. As the paper sets out, the purpose of this is to present back to you the strategic framework. This has been shared with you previously in the board development session and through the input of many people through the organisations and yourselves. This has evolved now into a strategic framework as we feel it's a more agile approach to actually delivering the requirements. It's essential as an organisation, and we've heard a number of times today that we work with partners, that people understand our role and function, and we're able to communicate effectively. The document sets out some really good examples where we've done that in the case for change, and I think it's led to some successful outcomes such as the IMTP, the Education and Training Plan, but it also identifies a number of areas where we can do better and we can continue to improve. And that's set out in the case for change. To address the case for change, the document sets out a number of key objectives, and there are 7 of them in total. And then to address those 7 objectives that range from better approach to structure, better collaboration, value and impact, a trusted partner, to name a few, we've set up 3 areas of priorities. In essence, those 3 areas of priorities focus on our relationship management and us being a collaborative, effective partner, that we and our partnerships and collaborative working, that we're seen as a trusted leader, and that relies on us being evidence driven, being a thought leader, and actually putting stuff out into the system, and that looks then at us being part of that system and credible in that space. And finally, to be more planned and proactive in our strategic communication and really linking back to our programmes of work and the impact and the difference we're making. And all of these things are about making us have a better partner to deliver better outcomes in the NHS. This isn't about us as an organisation, it's about our role in the system, and that's what's really important. The paper then generally covers and recognises the difficult context that we're doing this within. We covered that in a number of different conversations this morning, and then goes on to describe how we will look at the monitoring and evaluation of this and linking it to the enabling plan of our IMTP. So I won't go through the document in detail, but I know you will have read it, so I'm happy to take.
Or they've read it. Okay, any comments? Tom?
Actually, Chair. I certainly welcome this document. I think it's absolutely an excellent document. In fact, the language that is used was music to my ears. Things like evidence-driven leader, proactive language has been used, always on the front foot, it says, capitalize on opportunity and influence. So there was a lot within the document that I thought we can use in some of our other documents, particularly that we are evidence-driven. Talks about metrics that are going to be research-based around impact and efficiency. There's a whole host of examples. It was an excellent document to see how we would approach this particular subject. So I certainly welcome it, and I certainly will approve the framework. My one comment was I think we need to be a little bit more robust in the one section, I think it was section 5, I think it was, around evaluation and monitoring. Again, which I welcome, because if anything, that's the one area we need to be a little bit stronger on, is how we evaluate what we do and the impact of what we do. It talks about evaluation, but I think we need to strengthen the monitoring bit. It doesn't say much about how we're going to monitor this in terms of timelines, etc. But other than that, I certainly applaud the work that Sian and her team have done due to this framework. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the comments I put in when I annotated this was model paper for was I believe it was a really good report. I think it covered a lot in a relatively short. And of course, you would expect that when it's a comms paper. If it wasn't, then you'd be in trouble.
I think they get the message.
They get, yeah. So there was just one on the covering paper, which might be a typo, because we talk about the assistant director who starts in post June 2024. It's not. So they've started, not who starts in post.
No, I will explain.
2025.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that was one. And then the other one was just a bit about the evaluation too, which was the stakeholder reference group. And I just wondered in terms of sort of ongoing with that, whether there's going to be a sort of specific piece of work around the effectiveness and value how that is operating. Yes.
Yeah. Sian, I thought it was a really thoughtful and well structured framework. I think building on what sort of John said, as we sort of embed it, it's really what success looks like at the end of the year and how we know it's making a real difference. I also think it's being very aware of our audience.
Yeah.
So whilst this is very directional as a sort of strategy, and it'd be nice to see that next step, but equally as well, not getting too embroiled in the way we've always done it, being agile to the market that we're in and the audiences change. And I'd like to see that flex and the way in which we, you've already said about videos, we can be looking at podcasts. So I think for me, it's that real, how are we making a real difference on the ground that I'd like to see the next step. And also then with, how will teams be supported and held accountable for making that stakeholder engagement a core part of delivery and not something that just sits with comms, because I think that's that next piece over. But no, honestly, well done. It's a really good sort of directional piece of work. I just like to see that.
Yeah, I certainly agree that it's been said, Charles. I think it is a really good document and it's very easy to read. I suppose my one comment was, and again, it does link a little to the evaluation, and it's in the section around roles and responsibilities in relation to IMs. And I suppose it talks about, it's certainly said about leveraging their network communication channels. And I suppose I was sort of thinking, well, do we know what all those networks are? And I'm not saying I should stop this at all, but I do think maybe it's, as Dawn said, it's that next stage. What are all our networks? And maybe that's the discussion that we have with you, Chair, in terms of, what are the networks we've all got? Because some will be the same, some will be different. And if you don't know what they are, then you won't know what we should be evaluating how we know we're making a difference. So that was my thought about, how do we best do that? But yeah, that's really expected. It's really good.
Right.
Yeah, I think just to thank Sean really for taking on this extra part of the portfolio last year. So we might have the changes, the opportunity to look again at portfolio. So thank Sean for your leadership around this agenda, and some of the comments absolutely, exactly what Sean and I have been talking about the last couple of weeks really. And I think in particular, the fact that stakeholder engagement and working with partners in a collaborative way is not an optional thing that we do. It's got to be at the heart of all of what we do in order to make sure that people influence the great work that we have got the potential to do, but also then utilise the resources that we provide. That goes back to the heart of the impact and values. So yeah, very much this will be such a brilliant today. To the handbook.
That system, that we do the best part of.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you to approve. Yeah. I'm asking you to approve the communication and engagement strategic framework. And again, can you take back the thanks of the board to the team?
And to the organisation, because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of contribution right from all the teams. I think that's what's really important. This is an organisational approach, not just for the comms and engagement. And we do have the ideas of the delivery plan, and we're linking that to the delivery of the IMTP. So there is a detailed year one delivery plan behind this, which will track the monitoring piece, and then years 2 and 3 will grow off the back of that.
Well done, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm asking us to go to the approval of the strategic perinatal workforce plan. Lisa.
Diolch yn fawr actually sort of cadeirydd actually. So good morning everybody. Actually, what I actually want to do is actually present to you today actually the perinatal workforce plan. Actually, you will have actually seen a number of iterations actually of this plan, and we've actually engaged with you actually in its development. This is quite a key piece of work. Actually, it's taken quite a while actually to its develop, but it's very important. And the development of this particular plan is absolutely a key objective within our INTPs. I'm not going to go into detail actually in the plan, but what you will see is actually the very need actually for this plan. But I want to echo and build actually on the previous actually item in terms of this plan has been developed actually in collaboration actually and actually with engagement of many key stakeholders across NHS Wales. We've actually got clinical leads that have been involved in this piece of work, and obviously the communication outside and beyond their clinical actually responsibility has actually been key as well. Very necessary actually plan, because actually obviously this is actually a key thing actually where we know actually the healthcare needs actually of this perinatal actually workforce is changing. While birth rates in Wales are declining, the care complexity actually continues to increase, accompanied actually by the medical conditions actually of some of our mums to be, and actually obviously our key information is actually the health prevention agenda in order to develop actually healthy Wales. So the plan actually, as you can see, is actually developed actually and identified from key drivers, which we've actually taken on board actually from national and local reports. And the key themes for these actions is to grow the multi-professional workforce, develop the education and training for this workforce, develop the leadership and culture, and achieve the transforming of this workforce as well. It is very much recognising what the needs actually of this particular actually client group is, and therefore we'd actually sort of really raise into to this agenda. With actually the duty of quality is upon us. It's so important that that is embedded and actually sort of actually go throughout the document to ensure actually patient safety in this arena. So we are raising the levels of complexity, as we said, but really actually this is a document which has been engaged and actually is going to deliver a much improved actually workforce to deliver those much improved actually services to our sort of population. So I'm happy to take any comments.
I can't say how much I welcome this plan. And I commend the fact it's been built through collaboration and influence from all partners. Jane, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Good. I really welcome this plan. It's clearly drawn a lot of learning from things that have happened in organisations across the UK. I really like its focus on the team, the multi-professional team, across the professions and across both maternity and neonatal. I mean, that is so critical to the quality of care in these services. I also like its emphasis on the culture, both for the leaders, but also the culture of learning within the professions, within the teams, and the recognition that that's essential to improve practice. And clearly, there's also an emphasis on the ability thereby to speak up safely, which again, learning shows if people feel they can speak up safely, then a lot of issues can be avoided and really safe care can be delivered. So I really welcome this plan and thank the team for producing it.
But the big thank you goes to actually the extensive engagement of the clinicians from across NHS Wales, who've really been absolutely instrumental and in the centre of developing this plan. We couldn't have done it without them.
Any other comments?
Yeah, obviously, excellent piece of work, very well needed with everything that James just said. A couple of things from me. I mean, and I know the reason behind it and the work that's going on, but I was, staggered to see that 32% of pregnant women at initial assessment, young women showing higher rates of mental health conditions. And it's just making sure we make the links across, because that is quite a stark figure that's hit me. And just again, this is such a big point, but given everything we know about this service and the need for it, it was just in the implementation section where we talk about prioritisation. The second bullet point says to address quality and safety issues. I would like that to be the first bullet.
That point.
Yeah. Otherwise, really great piece of work.
And coming back on that, in terms of the linkages across, as we are doing with all our workforce plan, we are looking across the GR programmes actually within HEIW to make sure that we are utilising and effectively using the resources across now as well. So rather than duplicating, so that to achieve that audience outside of HEIW, we are being seen as working together. I think you raise a very, very good point about mental health. And therefore, that's why I did mention about the health prevention agenda, because that needs to happen well ahead of actually when these service users access these services. When they access it, a bit too late really. So that's actually where the broader actually sort of health prevention agenda is so important.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Lisa. And it's good to see it coming to fruition. We've seen it, and I know the work that's gone into this. I understand that. I agree with what's been said. But I was listening to an interview with Donna Oppiden on Sunday, which some of you may have listened to. Sadly, listened to Deadline on this, and it was really interesting because, and I suppose what I'm looking at is the implementation plan, because we keep having the same things happening around maternity care, and the latest report, which I think is it from Barrow again with that inquest, considering what they've been through on that report. So I'm very interested in the culture side of this. Yes, the quality, absolutely, and that should drive the culture change. But it will be critical that we develop a plan that we can monitor. We can go in and see if we're changing culture, deep dive, or the organisations are changing their culture. Because until we really tackle some of these ingrained issues, I mean, there will always be some staff who make mistakes. We're all human, and we should
recognise that, but it's just the way we respond and just, even people highly trained, this reluctance and the organisation's reluctance to admit when things have gone wrong. That seems to me just is still very embedded in the culture. Not, maybe not so much in Wales, but certainly across the NHS. So I'm interested in when you develop the plan as to how that can be monitored across Wales.
It's how much improvements that you can be.
Absolutely. But I'm really welcome this, and it's an excellent document. Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's following on from what Judith has said, and that is around the governance of the implementation plan. So I think it has been asked, and seeking assurance around frequency of monitoring of actions that are noted, and also then the reporting structure for assurance, which I think is what Judith was.
For me, the comment made by Donna about putting quality and safety
The top.
at the top.
I slipped up on that one. Normally I get it.
I would say almost everything that would be right. But this is an exceptional. This is endemic. These things, require our constant focus. And these things really matter to those yet to arrive. So I would say, put that before you publish it.
Yes,
put that first.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So I think everybody here is very supportive of this. We look forward to the delivery plan. And I think that question of governance, who's holding the rein on what bits and how that's held to account as a totality, because it's a whole service we're talking about here, not just fragments.
Yes, and obviously we will have our own internal governance structure within HEIW, where this board actually will obviously be able to see actually how that is being progressed. But I think everybody is right. This is a whole system approach, and therefore it's how do we engage with other partners to make sure, because we're not a
but I think we have a duty of care to ensure that the other parts are actually being, it is happening. So seeing that evidence, so it's very difficult to see impact just from one view.
Absolutely.
So, and this is going to take time and leadership focus. So I think the determination for me to see a picture, and not just on our performance, but what's happening elsewhere. Okay, so I'm asking you, please, to approve the plan for publication with the caveat that we change the order of that quality and safety up, and especially with the interest in developing the plan and the delivery of the plan and how it fits in the architecture of the partners involved, partner organisations that are involved in delivering it. Okay, can I ask your approval? Thank you very much. Agenda item 3.5, review of findings and consideration of implications in relation to the Audit Wales report addressing workforce challenges in the NHS in Wales. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much. So in February this year, Welsh Audit Office published a report called Addressing Workforce Challenges in the NHS Wales. And this report provides a response to that. So the Welsh Audit paper follows several publications and data briefings and reviews of workforce planning across NHS Wales, which has examined the central workforce challenge that despite high levels of investment and continued growth, the workforce is struggling to keep pace with the delivery of health and care. The Audit Wales report highlights significant workforce challenges in NHS Wales, including issues with sickness absence, agency use, and the complexity of national workforce planning due to the lack of a national workforce plan and some unclear system leadership arrangements. It sets out 3 recommendations for Welsh Government: reviewing national arrangements for medical commissioning, clarifying NHS Wales leadership arrangements, and the development of a longer term national workforce plan. We are clear in HEIW that we've been established with statutory functions regarding workforce planning and would absolutely welcome any system clarity to avoid overlaps and duplications. We also very much support the need for a longer term approach to workforce planning and be working with Welsh Government on the scoping and development of the long-term workforce plan. The report outlines one recommendation for HEIW, recommending that we're tasked with leading work within NHS Wales to strengthen workforce data, improve access to workforce data and insights, and build workforce modelling capacity to enhance supply and demand forecasting. This very much aligns with the HEIW remit letter for 25-26, which requires us to build that capacity with NHS Wales to deliver workforce planning skills and methodologies based on best practice. And this builds on the work that we've already done to develop data-driven and evidence-based workforce planning resources and infrastructure, and that we continue to build on these resources, supporting health boards and trusts. From an HEIW perspective, and this is a helpful paper, it recognises the importance and need to strengthen workforce planning approaches, recognising that this future focused approach to workforce planning absolutely needs to be integrated with service planning and digital transformation, requiring a focus on developing members' skills and expertise in teams closest to care delivery, and improving access to data and intelligence. Paper is presented for assurance today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. I think there's a mistake on section 5, which I think is a myth in the first line from section 4, because I think there are financial implications, particularly going forward if HEIW is asked to do more than is within the remit. I don't think is inappropriate, but and I suppose this is some of the areas that we need to take. We need to take a view on if that request comes in, but I think that's wrong to say.
To say there's no financial.
Well, it doesn't say that. It says there are no governance issues. But it needs to be connected. And this is me being incumbent, but I'm not sure what assurance I'm taking from the paper if I'm highly honest. I get the information's there, and the information's good, and it's helpful. What am I being assured of? Information on insurance. It's just one way of looking at things. Finally say, John. But thank you. Thanks for the detail. It's really helpful to have summary.
Any other comments?
Finally, so I certainly welcome the initial report and the response that we've got. I think critical for us as an organisation is that we get sound workforce planning methodologies that are consistent across Wales. That's not the case at the moment. It's a challenge because we've got different methodologies, and this is an example where we need to be driving best practice, that is evidence-driven, I think. So I get that HEIW should lead, but my question really is, experience to date would seem to suggest that there's fragmentation in how Wales deals with workforce planning. That we've got Welsh Government doing some of it, we've got health boards doing, we've got HEIW. So I guess it's assurance around that this report and our response will facilitate a systems approach and consistency to workforce planning across Wales.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So sitting underneath this is a deliverable that we're building it through across the organisation, linking very much with the data and digital team and the workforce planning team here to develop, I suppose, to bring together the approaches to workforce planning that we've been growing. So we had our 6-step model, but we now have our data-informed models and bringing those together. We're also in a series of conversations with Welsh Government and also with the professional networks as well around what that looks like. So certainly from with the workforce directors, I've been having a series of conversations really to build up what's the what's the system approach to workforce planning and to influencing that. We're also meeting with Welsh Government on a regular basis, and workforce planning and the use of data to inform our workforce plans is the main topic. We've got a meeting in 2 weeks' time to progress that. So it feels like we're engaging with a range of stakeholders to get us to a place where there's a more commonly understood approach that uses our existing methodologies, but is building on the data that we've got available to us now. I think the next actions is really bringing all that together and thinking about scenario modelling. What does that tell us about what the future could look like, and how does that inform our planning? But we've needed to do the steps to get us to that place.
So to deliver this, I don't know how to put this. Do we have the capability and capacity within Wales to deliver these expectations based on our current skill of workforce planning?
And is that a system perspective? I think there's a recognition that there's more to do in building those skills. I think we understand what that needs to look like, and I think we have a role, and we're working specifically with a number of organisations to build that capacity, where we've done deep dive and provided specific recommendations. We're supporting staff in 2 or 3 organisations with the opportunity to do qualifications in workforce planning to build that capacity locally. So I think our reach is significant, and I think there's a top-down and bottom-up approach. But there's more to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a topic that comes up quite often with the chief execs as well. There is a recognition that there are definite gaps in capacity and capability. I think there are a lot of resources and support being provided from HEIW, but in a sense, until we get data grabbed, it's almost a hypothetical exercise, whereas now I think we can be a little bit more realistic about that once we can include the data and model it. And really it's that kind of a bit like the rotation programme, how do we stimulate that kind of community of practice, which I know is going on, but to get that sort of improvement right across the system. And because not every organisation can do it all for itself. But it's definitely work in progress, but you're right, there are gaps that definitely must be.
So I think it would be interesting to. I was very ambitious first to have a 10-year, first to have a big workforce plan. It's interesting to hear the crash of the gears changing in NHS England or in the English NHS, in terms of what does the NHS, what's it going to look like? And the demographic change, I alluded to it in the PESTEL analysis. One of the weaknesses we have is if we keep topping up, if we keep filling in with new people, we're losing experience. And not only that, the population is aging. And I think the West Street mentioned something like 1/3 of the population working for the NHS on that trajectory. There is a thing about this, about being realistic, and we do not have a very clear plan, I think, a clear clinical plan on, and therefore, what do you aim at? So we're using surrogate measures based on ways that we used to do. Play, for instance, play AI, and it changes things dramatically. Play in change into community at primary and prevention. It changes things completely. And play in innovation in treatments. We've got to have some way of being of yes, getting on with it and planning it, but actually placing it in some way closer to where we're going to get. So for me, I thought the report from the audit office was very straightforward, and it's a good mirror to aim at. And the challenge is, how do we as a system, and how does HEIW play its part as a good partner in that, get a grip on something that no one's ever got a grip on before. And that's the problem. There isn't a model anywhere that can do this. I think the Denmark experience might be getting there, but you don't build it overnight. And I think maternity, the perinatal paper, for instance, is a very good example how you could build it. What's the model you want? What are the things we need to do? What sorts of people do we need? What can people expect? And what's the quality, safety, and outcome from that? Anyway, we're asked to note this paper. I think we should welcome it. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. It is now 11:32, so we've taken 2 minutes off the tea break. So can I suggest we have a comfort break and reconvene here at 11:42? Well, Things back live. Are we ready to restart? Yeah. Croeso, no. Welcome back, everybody. And we're going straight on to agenda item 4.1. And this is, you're doing the introductions on this, but welcome, Oliver.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So, a very quick introduction. So, Oliver Mellor, General Management Trainee, who spent the last few months with the planning and performance team. Doing a real piece of work. Yeah, a real piece of work. This, people will be aware that we're required to keep the sort of requirements around the well-being of future generations out this year, and part of that is actually looking at the well-being objectives and producing a statement. But more importantly, it's the how we do it and working in social partnership. So we're going to hand it over to Ollie because Ollie is led on all of the work really. So over to you, and then I assume you're happy to take questions which you presented.
Yeah, so thank you all for taking the time to review the papers that I sent out. So given that I'm not going to go into any extensive detail on the Act, but instead just highlight the key considerations. So if you can go to the next slide, please, it's brilliant. Oh, sorry, that one. So the primary objectives of the agenda item is to secure approval for the wellbeing objectives and the wellbeing statement. We have a clear mandate from the Welsh Government to publish these papers by the end of the financial year. In order to achieve this and to meaningfully embed the Act within HEIW, we have undertaken extensive internal and external stakeholder engagement. This engagement has allowed us to not only meet the requirements of the Act, but also to develop objectives in a statement that authentically reflects the culture and values of HEIW. So post-executive team feedback, we took these drafts to the local partnership forum, who provided their formal endorsement, and now both our staff side representative and our chief executive have signed off on our social partnership report, demonstrating the support from both staff and executives around this work. Next slide, please. So this work is not seeking to reinvent existing initiatives. Instead, it looks to leverage the Act as a framework to support and report on our strategic priorities, national focus areas, and on our staff well-being. So this Act is not a driver in itself, but instead it serves as a tool for us to assess our work through a future generation and sustainability lens. This allows us to identify best practice, enhance staff and public awareness of the impact that we have, and demonstrates our contributions to a Wales that is adaptable, compassionate and healthy. Next slide. As such, our wellbeing objectives focus on resilience and adaptability, aligning our work with workforce planning functions to and the priority areas for this are designed to ensure that NHS Wales is equipped to address multi-generational workforce challenges, adapt to evolving strategic health priorities and embed preventative approaches. Next slide. Our second objective is on compassionate leadership and embedding that within our development functions, ensuring we build strong leadership pipelines and embed compassionate leadership into future workforce generations. Next slide. And to successfully implement all of these objectives, we must cultivate an internal culture that prioritises staff well-being. This means creating psychological safe environments where staff are empowered to contribute in an environment where they can operate at their best, deliver meaningful outcomes and position HEIW as a well-being role model to other public bodies. Final slide, please. So in light of this information, the board is asked today to approve the wellbeing objectives, the statements, and also notes the social partnership report. I welcome any questions you may have.
Yeah. So, any comments, questions for Oliver? This is our first foray as coming under the Act. We've always tried to act as if we were under the Act. It's from, I think this 1st of January, we were actually under the Act. So this is our first real document facing that way. So, Dawn.
I was just going to say thank you for the presentation, it was really good.
What popped out to me is obviously the, the next steps really and seeing how we are going to bring to life that sort of vision and what it is. But the nice thing about the messaging around the culture, social value and what we're doing with the stakeholders and neighbours and the comms, I think it gives you a nice sort of storytelling opportunity as well to a wider public. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. John?
So thank you very much for the paper. I liked its structure. So I found that very helpful. Vision, what is the priority areas, and its emphasis on measuring. So how are we going to measure our activity against what our priority areas are? I thought it was quite clear, and I felt it flowed nicely in terms of an area that is important. So I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Any other comments? So what's it been like for you? Alex will put a finger in it.
It's been incredibly educational. There's something I'm really passionate about. Being part of that future generation of the workforce coming in now. It's something I already felt passionate about. So being assigned this project, it was just aligned my passions with my work, which was fantastic. And it's given me experience to speak with all departments, all the divisions of HEIW, and really get that sort of understanding of what we're about. So it's been a really great opportunity.
Thank you very much. So I'm asking the board, please, to approve the wellbeing objectives, the wellbeing statement, and note the social partnership report for publication. Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on now to the integrated performance report. Lynn.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tommy. Okay, so just a very quick overview, because again, the performance report, there's a lot of detail in here. I think performance report 3 covers the latest period. Again, as I've probably mentioned before, period is slightly flexible in terms of when we measure certain achievements, but it's broadly up to sort of February, March time of the year. So we've got most of this year's sort of performance covered within here. You'll see that in terms of all the deliverables that we've got, half of them have been achieved to the timescales that we expected. Most of the others are expected to be completed by the end of the year. And certainly talking to people in the last few days, we're still expecting that to be the case. The only exception, which is highlighted in the cover paper, is around the work we were doing on medical associate practitioners, so PAs and some associates. And obviously you'll be aware that there's a wider piece of work going on across the UK, and the Len review that is looking at this that we're sort of plugged into. We've then got a section then on recruitment around education training for 24-25. Again, I think it paints a very positive picture, certainly for the autumn intake and for most of the year. We know that for spring intakes, it's been more challenging in terms of some of those fill rates. And again, that appears to be the position as we go into the sort of into March. We then highlighted here an update around those areas that are currently in escalation as well. And again, I think it's a reasonably positive picture in terms of we're seeing examples of improvement in some of those areas, albeit that they're perhaps not ready to be de-escalated just yet. Although there is one service that you'll see that we were able to de-escalate during the reporting period. And then we've got a section on our internal organisational performance, which again highlights how we're doing against some of those key indicators, so things like PADR, staff turnover, and compliance with statutory mandatory training as well. In terms of performance reporting going forwards, we'll be looking to produce another report that will sort of round off this financial year and how we've done against that, And then, as I mentioned before, we're looking at how we change some of the performance measures in line with the IGP for next year that we'll bring to the board in May. So that's probably all I wanted to cover. I'm conscious there's a lot of detail in the report, so happy for questions and comments. Thank you.
Questions? Sorry.
Thank you. As I probably said before, always a good read. I enjoy this paper and going through the performance report. I suppose just from my perspective, it looks like there's been a bit. This is the third report we're having, 24, 25, but it says that only 50%, 19 and 38, achieved as planned today. So that looks slightly a down decrease. And I just wondered if that to some extent is a phasing issue, and where we might have been expected to be in, because I know it said we expect completion by end of year. And I suppose particularly as we start doing the performance report for next year, we can take that into consideration necessarily. So on cold thinking of it, it looks like down, but maybe it's not. I'm just asking a question.
No, it is a good question. I think when you look at some of the reasons for some of the delays, although we expect people to catch up and complete that work by the end of the year, with the one exception, one of the key reasons I think is the extent to which we're able to engage with external stakeholders. And it is a reflection that we've been taking around how we do that differently. I think in terms of probably planning our work next year, we may want to think about, what are some of the key pinch points. So if we're trying to work with the NHS wider system, people in health boards and trusts, typically winter isn't a good time to be trying to engage with frontline clinicians. So I think that's something for us to reflect on and maybe look at how we program some of that work, particularly the engagement element, maybe earlier in the year.
I think it brings back to the previous paper that Sharon provided, because it's also about us making sure that we're planning that stakeholder engagement more effectively from the start. And sometimes that doesn't always happen, and then sometimes we're having to go back in order to include people when, actually with better training, better awareness of all of the different stakeholders and how best to engage them. I think, we will see that becoming a little bit more accurate, but yeah, it's never going to be an accurate, is it? But yeah, we that's exactly the point, isn't it? As Luna said, that we picked up when we were looking at the reports.
Yeah, thanks, Luna. Really good report, so much information. I was interested under the learner support area that our CPD attendance is dropped quite significantly. I know we're not year end, so I don't know whether that's going to level out. But it's paid slide 26. It seemed there was a bit of a drop off last year, but this year seems to have dropped off, well, almost half. Is there any? I couldn't see any explanation. Is there anything particular? I don't know if it's timing issue or phasing. Like, I don't understand.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
Let's be quicker. So I know that some of this relates to pharmacy CPD, but I would probably need to have a discussion with the team. I know that in the past with some of our pharmacy CPD it's been quite variable, but I would need to give you a full answer. I'd probably need to go back and have
yeah, it's okay. I'm happy to
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it just stood out for me as a drop.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is again, sort of related to the previous point, there is something about how we engage with frontline staff, and whether there are periods where undertaking CPD is harder to do. But yeah, I'll take that one away.
Okay,
James?
I was looking at the Welsh language statistics on page 21, and bearing in mind that we're now under the Welsh language standards, or are about to be, I was puzzled at the drop in words translated in particular, but also rather interested by the Welsh language competence trend in those data. Wondered if anyone had any comments on that.
I'm going to have to take that away as well. So I've got Hewity in the room here. Do you want to add anything to here?
In terms of the translation numbers, yeah, they went down about 200,000 last year. But they've been fairly consistent around the 5 million mark for the last 4 years now. Yeah, they went down 200 last year, but the way we started off this year, at the moment, we're heading for 6 million. So I think that's a natural sort of fluctuation. In terms of the competencies, what exactly, Jane, is the question there?
So if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, Hugh, you see there's a major drop-off at the end of 2023 in terms of Welsh language competence. Is that just happenstance?
I mean, we were always very low in terms of competence, and it was 23 where we actually learned from something that Bevan had done, and we put it onto Microsoft Forms, and we went up dramatically, didn't we, from 22 to 56, and then I think by last year we'd reached 85%. So if there was a drop off, it was just a blip 2 years ago, but I think we're up to just about the target.
No, it's not showing that at all.
Not showing.
And I think there is so Jane is actually showing actually that basically it's really plummeted actually 23 and actually there's a retention. I think we need to look at a recording issue there.
Yeah, we looked at that.
Can we take this and get back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just make a few comments? And the report is very helpful in that it generates thought, questions, etc. One of them that came to mind is the concern I'm sure we've all got around pill rates. Particularly, I was struck by the mental health one, which was quite low, considering we've got a mental health workforce plan where we've had some assurance that things are progressing there in terms of recruitment. So rather than go into the details around that, it says within the performance report that in order to try and address this as a system, which is welcomed, that there's a working group that works with universities to look at recruitment and fill rate. So my question is that sufficient in light of the situation that we seem to be facing annually, particularly we know what happens around springtime. So are our mechanisms in order, as a partner within this, are they appropriate? Secondly, the turnover rate. It's 12.4%. If my memory serves me correct, that's the highest in Wales.
I suspect some of that is to do with some of our short-term contracts and some of our graduates and interns who will come into the workforce and then move on. So it's the nature of
it. It's dropped to 7.2%.
And it has dropped.
Yeah. The PADR, I welcome the improvement. That is something to be welcomed. We are a learning organisation, and so I look forward at future boards to that being significantly higher. And can I lastly say, Chair, we need to be careful around our use of language. I've said this previously. We talk about driving transformation in the multidisciplinary education sector way, and yet we equally talk about multi-professional education. I'm not quite sure what we mean in terms of that difference. I can understand if we said interprofessional, but can I ask for consistent in the report that we use the appropriate nomenclature?
Question. John's asked. Oh, got the right.
Is that sufficient?
So just.
So comments we all made, I think that there's
there's some work taking place. I think that work is absolutely the right direction, and I think it's encompassing the right range of initiatives. And the question would be, is enough being done? Do we need to push forward even more? And I think absolutely we need to push forward even more.
I'm just going back to the overview, the performance overview, and obviously picking up on the MEPs, which are known typically with reports. And I suppose, given the critical role it plays in the future model, is there anything you can do to influence further what we have with the UK, or? So,
No, everybody's just waiting.
Okay, so there's nothing you can plan with balancing that sort of mismatch of what's going to happen with the job, so it's not there.
And that was a sort of policy position that we were talking about yesterday. So I think it's just, you know, that will clarify exactly how we need to take things forward. And I think anything we might do in the meantime is plan to the end something which not given the sensitivities or anything as well.
So strategic listening to actively respond.
Well, that's a very maybe stupid question. Is there anything in this report that's reflected in the corporate risk? Is that clear in the report? So what I'm saying is, I think it's such a big read, right? And I would suggest that all the independent members are reading this every month. Now, after a while, you get your eyes go a bit lazy, right? So I think it would be incredibly useful if there was, at the top end of this report, these things are on the corporate, these things affect the corporate risk register. Yeah? Now that draws your eye. Second thing is there a risk register across this?
So there will be local risk registers.
Yeah. But is there, when you look at it as a whole, as an executive, given that we're going into the realms of having to make decisions, yeah, you know, is there a risk register that's shining out of this? Because I can read down individual bits and get the fact that there's a risk. I can look at trajectories, but I'm interested in what's causing the heat.
The first question you asked about corporate risk register reports, they should be allowed.
Yes.
That's another risk register.
No.
So I think just to draw to make it absolutely straightforward for us to stop, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I wondered whether, and this is probably not for the whole board, but particularly with the education committee, you know, there's those things that you give a focus to a specific deep dive to, highlighting the fact that that's happened. I'm trying to make it easy for all the board members to see how they can get not just being able to ask questions, but can get the assurance from this. Because it's an encyclopedic piece of work. And each bit can take you down to so many layers. I don't think, I think the attention span is very difficult. This is a phenomenal amount of work and a phenomenal amount of information. I just want to get the most out of it.
No, that's I mean that's a good question, good challenge, I think. And one of the things that we're looking at when we change the performance framework is what does the board need to see fundamentally, but actually what is considered more widely at an operational level. So it takes into account that risk point. So key risks should be into the board discussion.
See, I thought John's question, how are we doing it now? I guess that's the ice pick, isn't it? Yeah. That's not for us to say you're not doing it. We're just saying, are we
There are
doing it?
occasions where we are, which is the whole point of the conversation, isn't it, really? Yeah, to shine a light and
Yeah.
mirror.
I think we chatted, didn't we, very briefly at the last time when we sort of had this reporting around sort of, I love the detail, but there is that fine line of getting too operational and us being actually to sit above at a strategic level. And I think that we're probably bordering in some respects here.
Yeah.
I think for us, what we need to see, on certainly what I would like to see as a board member, is what, a little bit of what the chair said, is that real headline around what were success factors. It allows us to drill down into the details for context. But it's the more that we do, and the challenge that we've got in this market, this could potentially be a bigger piece of, and it is a very, very useful piece of work. But when I look at what I'm drawn to, it is the risk, are we managing the risk? It is what we like around our deliverables, and are we on track on the discipline area? What should we be looking at? What's coming over the horizon that I should be thinking about to go forward? And I feel as if there needs to just have that elevator pitch atop of it for us then to drill down. So yes,
Is that helpful?
That's very helpful, yeah. Yeah, I think we're actually doing something to
Yeah.
develop this service, so that's great.
So if you could give that some thought. And you might, there's a totally different spectre of this for the exec team, you know. But we want to make sure that you are successful and that we don't drop anything, but neither do we want to get into the machine. Yeah. We want to stay in the helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're asking you to be asking for a level of assurance from you, not just a level of detail. Okay, so what are we asking? We're asking to receive the report for assurance. Well, it's very assuring we know a lot, right? And with the suggestions that you've heard, if we can use that to build the next iteration. This has come so far from when we first started. It's just unbelievable. Thank you very much. So, Director of Finance report, please, it'd be like your board meeting.
I'll shut that up.
All right, well, you hope you can shut that.
Yeah. Thanks, thank you. So this is the financial report for this financial year. We're almost there, 4 days left to go. So you've got the year-to-date position, which when we reported this was up to the end of February. You'll see that there's been an improvement in month in terms of our financial position. And I was just going back to the question earlier about stress testing the financial position. One of the things that we go into a lot of detail every month is looking at financial risks and opportunities, and we share a high level of that in the appendix. It probably doesn't, again, really sort of illustrate the amount of work that goes on in the organisation to assess financial risk and then really forecast. So at this stage of the year, you'll see that that appendix around risks and opportunities, particularly the ones around the software intelligence, there's a lot fewer of them. The financial risk range is a lot closer. And that gives us confidence that actually we've the task with quite a lot of certainty that we should achieve a financial balance position, probably a small surplus for this financial year on our revenue budget. In terms of capital, again, this has been quite a big year for us in terms of having all Wales capital funding for the Bwrdd project, and we refreshed some of our IT in the organisation. And again, I think, big thanks to everybody for the work that they've done in sort of managing this during the course of the year. And again, we're forecasting that we should be able to manage within the capital allocation. And the trick is always to try and use it all without overspending. So it is really sort of trying to land it quite finely on the pinhead sometimes. So we are doing that. What we tend to do is rely on being able to purchase certain items of IT towards the year end to sort of help us manage that so that we make the best use of that funding. So you'll see that in terms of both our key financial targets around revenue and capital, we're forecasting to break even. On the public sector payments policy, so this is how quickly we pay our invoices to non-NHS suppliers. We are exceeding target and look to probably exceed target of 95% by the end of the year. So again, that's good news. And when we talk about the economy and everything, it's really good because actually it means we're giving cash flow to local businesses and suppliers on a timely basis. So that's good. That's probably all I wanted to cover in terms of the year-end report, other than to say what I mentioned before really is this is probably the first year that we will have delivered financial break-even and not returned funding to Welsh Government. So I think that's a good news story in terms of being able to say that we've used all of the funding that was made available to us, and hopefully through some of the performance reporting, we can demonstrate that actually we can deliver really good value in terms of education, training and workforce development. So I'd like to stop there and take any questions.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Glenn on that finance report? So we got the risk appetite, right, Glenn? Yeah. I mean, that's my reflection, in that nothing happens without taking a managed risk, and that importance of that risk appetite to the financial outcome and the performance outcome, I think is something we need to keep always reminding ourselves as we set it and review it during the year. Okay, so I'm asking you to, is this to note?
Note for assurance.
Note for assurance. I ask that we note for assurance the finance report. Thank you, Glenn. There's a glass of water there if you need any. Okay. Oh yes, and we also note the financial risks and opportunities which may impact on achieving key financial targets by the end of the year. Yes. Yes, that's the government health warning. Okay, thank you. Can I ask us to go on to 4.4, the staff survey, and we're welcoming Diana.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the report and associated slides I'm going to walk through now highlights a summary of HEIW's findings from the 2024 staff survey. Like I said, highlighting some trends, given the fact we now have 2 years worth of data, and first focusing on some areas of potential priority for us. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So pleasingly, we saw an improvement in response rate into 2024 of 86.6%, which was an increase of just over 11%. And with the completion of the survey, staff are asked to complete equality monitoring questions, albeit there is an option for them to not disclose this information. But this information not only helps us understand the diversity of our workforce alongside the data we collect in ESR, some of which you'll see on the slide here, but it'll also allow us to gain an understanding of staff experience by those from various backgrounds, including protected characteristics. And its aim is to ensure our policies and practices are inclusive and supports our community, our commitment to equality and fairness. So we'll be taking monitoring and insight data into our EDI steering group, use the data from the staff survey to ensure the feedback is reflected in our strategic equality enabling action plan. And we'll come, as we commence into 2025 survey into the autumn, we'll be focusing efforts to increase the response rates of the equality monitoring data, highlighting its importance in completion and us understanding and appreciating the experience of all of those who work for us at HEIW. Next slide, please. So staff engagement index, it's a consistent measure that we've used in all of our staff surveys now going back to 2013 when they first commenced in NHS Wales. And they are the staff survey index is a predictor of performance, and it's associated with staff retention, quality improvement and innovation, and care quality for those patient-facing organisations. There are 3 elements that you see on the screen there, with 7 questions from the survey that contribute to the staff engagement index. And these are pride in the organisation, engagement in the work undertaken, and involvement in decision making.
Staff involvement in decision making is the most important, and this was the one of the questions that we saw an increase in our responses from 23 to 24. And HEIW's positivity score for this question was 22% higher than that across the NHS in Wales. We in HEIW recorded the highest staff engagement index across Wales, and we did see a 0.9% increase in points from 2023, which is pleasing to see. Next slide, please. You will see from the full detailed organisational report appended in the papers that the report highlights responses across all questions and is themed, as in previous years, along 10 overall themes along the left-hand side of the screen here. Positivity scores are calculated for each theme and are based on the percentage of people that responded positively, either strongly agree or agree to the questions within the survey. And you will note that we have seen improvements in all themes by comparison to our responses in 2023. This is reflected in the middle column that you see on the graph here, which reports our annual trend. Along the right-hand side, you'll see how our results compare to those NHS comparator organisations. And whilst reporting an increase from 23 to 24, the area we fall slightly below our comparator organisation is patient safety. Which is important to note that these questions relate to how the organisation encourages staff to report as well as respond to errors, misses or incidents. Next slide, please. So when we looked across all question responses and compared these to responses both in 23 and the responses for our comparator organisations, we've identified some areas where we have seen improvements, pleasingly. And of those surveyed, 80% of colleagues said they felt they're able to make improvements in their work areas and are happy to go the extra mile in delivering their work. Morale has also shown an upward trend, rising from 66.8 to 69.2 in 2024, albeit we recognise more work to be done there. Workplace culture as it relates to belonging continues to be an area of strength for us in HEIW, with the study theme measuring compassionate culture increasing to 73.9% in 23. And similarly, diversity and inclusion efforts have been well received, with 83.1% of respondents acknowledging their individual differences and that they're respected within the organisation. In addition, we also saw improvements across all question areas that related to negative experiences of those staff experiencing bullying and harassment by managers, colleagues and service users. Next slide, please. All feedback as it relates to staff experience is important to us, and so those areas for improvement to which we will commit to take action include responses relating to staff well-being, being able to meet conflicting demands on their time in work, as well as staff feeling that we have enough staff in the organisation to undertake their role. Although improved from 24, improved within 2024, 66.4% of colleagues are still reporting that they're either always or often able to meet conflicting demands on their time at work, with 56.2% of colleagues feeling like there is enough staff in the organisation to undertake their role. The percentage of staff who feel that HEIW takes positive action on health and wellbeing dropped by nearly 5%, from 77.5 to 73.9 in 2024. And there was also a decline in the percentage of colleagues who feel that there are opportunities to develop their careers within the organisation. At the end of February, we received free text comments that have gone through a process of taking out information that can identify colleagues, and we've been able to undertake an analysis of that to compare it against the quantitative data results in order to get a deeper understanding into the context of staff's response to the survey. So we undertook an analysis of the 134 colleagues who added free text comments into the survey and identified some common themes that you will see on the screen here. Pleasingly, colleagues feeling valued, supported, motivated, and there was a strong praise for line management support, which was an area of focus for us in last year's survey, so that's pleasing to see. And similarly, to responses in relation to compassionate cultures, there's a clear sense of belonging and satisfaction in staff with their roles, and with colleagues appreciate the climate, teamwork and trust. Whilst hybrid working was noted as an area, oh sorry, can we move to the next slide please? I just realised I didn't ask you to do that, so you can't see what I'm talking to. So whilst hybrid working was noted as a beneficial model for staff that support the managing flexible working, organisational expectations, colleagues say, remain a little unclear for some, with some practical issues around office facilities, parking shortages being cited as impacting employee satisfaction.
There were comments related to relation to the impact of directive management styles and additional layers of bureaucracy contributing to workplace effectiveness. And as we saw in some of the data, workload pressures and lack of work-life balance are also affecting employees' well-being. Issues were also presented around lack of career progression as well as impact on fixed-term contracts and what that was having on staff morale. Next slide, please. So based on both our qualitative and quantitative results, we've identified some proposed key organisational areas of focus for HEIW looking forward. So although workplace culture is strong overall, there is data in the free text comments to suggest there's some examples of lack of autonomy in neighbourhood working. And reviewing our organisational design and improving internal business processes would help staff work more effectively. Whilst morale has increased, concerns around workforce pressure and the ability to meet conflicting demands remains prevalent. A focus on managing workload expectations and addressing burnout will be crucial. Understanding the reasons behind the reduction in wellbeing scores will also help improve support, work-life balance, and ensure employees feel their wellbeing is being prioritised. The decrease in staff feeling there are opportunities to develop their careers suggests the need to prioritise talent management and career progression plans as we move into 2025. And finally, hybrid working has been highlighted as a key area for many, with expectations remaining a little unclear, including some practical issues in relation to the estate. So developing a clearly defined hybrid working policy and addressing some of those practical and logistical challenges we hope will help improve staff experience and understanding of their expectation in this area. Next slide, please. So set out in the paper are our actions to address the findings at both organisational and directorate level. Over the next month, we'll be finalising the organisational level action plan and reporting progress directly through to our executive team. Directorate leads have been identified and they are currently reviewing the local data and will be establishing a staff survey working group across HEIW to ensure that support is in place as we develop and deliver those local action plans. We're incredibly proud of the engagement and participation in the survey within HEIW and recognise the importance of acting on feedback received. And we'll be updating colleagues throughout the year through staff forums, directorate meetings, etc., as we move through to delivering against those actions. Yeah.
Any comments or questions for Rhiannon?
Rhiannon, thank you. It's really the paper, really good morning. It's an excellent presentation. I think the response rate is brilliant. So I think everybody's been involved in generating information. People respond to be well equipped. Inevitably, that means you have more people saying the things, so more pressure to actually make those changes. Because when you're in an organisation, which I have been, where you're having a say, you think 30% responsible is brilliant. You start worrying about, why people aren't responding now. You've got to focus on what you do. And I was quite interested in a couple of reports. I think the issue you mentioned about career progression is quite an interesting challenge for this organisation because actually it's not big. So there's almost an inevitability that quite a few people are going to have to leave all that career progression. And I suppose then I look forward to seeing how you manage that because we almost want people to come in to be developed and get the benefit both for NHS Wales wide and for us, but inevitably accept they will move out and hopefully we've instilled in them the right sort of culture values to take that forward. So I think that's quite an interesting challenge for an organisation this size. So interested, when you give reports back to see how you can take that on board. Diversity I thought it's good to see that improvement, but I always tend to do this. That does mean 17% of staff roundabout feel that they're not respected because of diversity. So that, is quite an issue to have that number. So again, I just noticed that would be interesting to see how that is also improved taking forward and thinking about some of the free comments last time. And, are we talking about the same percentage of people, same people, or is it a different group? I know that's hard to identify, but although you might be able to see that, but really interesting. And because it's such a good report, it inevitably means there's lots of questions, but we'll stop there.
I think the dashboard, as we have, and big thank you to HEIW's data team for the improvements that we've seen across that dashboard. It allows us now to gain a deeper understanding of staff experience into some of those areas. So hopefully with that data set, we are able to identify where those people have responded that they're not feeling respected, where those challenges may lay. So
Jane?
Thank you. I echo what Judith just said about the response rate and the really useful analysis that you've given us, Rhiannon. Much appreciated. I'm now going to put my Speaking Up Safely champion hat on and focus in on the patient safety question, because I think that's actually really revealing in terms of where we are. There's been a real improvement year on year in the belief that the organisation encourages people to report. So that's really good to see, given the amount of communication we've put into that. It's also good to see cross-referencing with question 17 about in the inclusivity questions that staff are feeling safe to raise things. So those are really good points. I think it's interesting to see in the detail of the questions that being treated fairly when you raise things is still a bit of a concern. More of a concern is whether the organisation then takes preventative action to prevent reoccurrence. And then people are also concerned about whether they receive feedback on what's happened as a result. So I think that gives us a good set of things to aim at in the current year. I was also really interested in the substantial variation in the directorate responses to these questions. The highest was 90% confidence and the lowest was 49%. So that average actually has quite a range across the organisation. And again, I would hope that the group looking at Speaking Up Safely will use this to inform the ongoing work. But thank you, really useful.
Yes.
Go on.
Yes, just my a great report. Thank you for the presentation. Just again, I think it's coming back on that, and I'm really glad it was the focus on the health and wellbeing will continue, particularly in light of some of the questions around having enough time with family and friends during leisure or feeling emotionally burnt out and response to that. You know, we heard earlier this morning, we've got one team working 7 days a week at the moment with a big deadline coming, and I know that, but it's just how we recognise and support those staff. Was, you know, potentially if the survey had landed the week afterwards, they may have felt totally drained. So I just think we just need to be aware of what's.
Yeah, I welcome when sort of echo my what Colin said comments. I think for me, it would be nice, I know we got that organisation level report. It'd be nice to have a sort of a step up report now with really what the key themes are and putting some targets together so we can see the change and the influence over the next year where we sort of doing it systematically. Because I think it's very easy to take this and sort of identify, you know, opportunities, but unless we drill down and say, right, okay, we've really made an impact on that. Because, you know, percentages are absolutely great, and I'm recognising this with the improvement we made, then you put it down to the people and the directorate, you know, you've got a total of 438 out of what, and it just brings a different spin on it. So I think it would be nice to have that operational level report done, but let's be bold and sort of give ourselves some targets and how we're going to get there to achieve it in that year. But then I think we'll sort of really embed the culture we want to see, but also demonstrate leadership that everybody within has a voice. That's
Me, Helen, questions. Does everybody do an exit? Interview. And I think that would be illuminating. And I think it's a reflection on the value they've given for their time within the organisation, their experience, and whether or not it's enabled them to move on to progress their own careers. I think an ambition of mine would be to see everybody developing, which inevitably means that we would have, I don't know what the optimum turnaround would be then. So we might think 12% is terrible, but actually it could be really healthy. And not that I don't want to value everybody who's here and their time and their commitment when they're here, but actually we're in about making other people great, aren't we? That's our raison d'etre. So I think there's a whole set of things we might want to discuss at some point about what our ambition is.
If I could come in there, yes, we do exit interviews and we have a way of analysing where people go. I think what this gives us is the opportunity to have that conversation in the organisation about what talent looks like, what development looks like. You know, we are an education development. We've had the conversation today about the type of organisation that we are. One of our enabling plans is an internal workforce plan that incorporates talent as well, how we're developing talent. And I think what the staff survey gives us is from the staff, the things that they wanted us to talk about and to explore to make things better. And I think, there will be opportunities to understand actually what does that mean and what does it look like from a staff perspective. And I think that's the opportunity.
It looks like a crock of gold.
Yes, I mean, I have to say, having sat in a number of organisations and received staff surveys, this is hugely positive. There is always more that we can do. There is always learning, and the feedback is just so helpful for us to make sure that we're improving the experience of our people. But to have an 86% response rate and that engagement, and actually the free text comments. So many people were saying how much they enjoyed working in the organisation, and the compassionate cultures. That it was really positive. There is always more that we can do, and this is really what Rhiannon is trying to convey, is those areas where we think we can make the biggest impact.
And I welcome Jane to two comments about patient safety and two questions. And having been involved in staff survey for a number of years previously, those questions are very, very much directed, but do we need to understand how we can apply it internally in this organisation? They are very much about sort of the people actually within the sort of the NHS, to being able to raise an incident, but then getting the feedback on that particular incident. And of course, the majority of those are relating to patient safety issues, and therefore we need to look at it in the light of patient speaking up safely as to how we apply that, because it comes across as a very low percentage, but actually it means something different to different organisations, and it's how we adapt that and make that understanding.
I think that connection between the work you're doing to develop education and training and your culture and your leadership directly affects the outcome for Mrs. Jones and Di Barton.
It's how they're answering that.
And that's all. That is a reminder. And don't forget, we brought a lot of people originally into the organisation with only an educational background, not a health provision background. I think our staff should be very proud of the impact that their work has on the direct care of the individuals. So, Rhiannon, what you're asking us to do, are you asking us to review the contents of the report, which I think we've done, and a full overview report in Appendix 1, and consider the high-level findings, and to approve the next steps set out in the paper are proportionate and appropriate? I think we've done that. Okay, thank you. And just before you go, this is your last board meeting with us for the moment.
Temporarily.
Yes, and you go on secondment to the NHS executive. Can I say two things to you? Number one, thank you so much for your contribution to HEIW and the progress we've made. And number two, remember you've got friends.
Always. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for everything you've done. Right, audit office, agenda item 4.5, Audit Wales. Audit Wales annual audit report. Who's leading on this?
No.
Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for the opportunity for coming today. So I'll take the annual audit report and structured assessment report together. The annual audit report provides a summary of our work that's been completed in the last calendar year. And just to note that all the work that's included in this has been through the audit committee process, and where there are recommendations, I'll go formally through that tracking process by the audit committee. On the accounts work, our work concluded that the 23-24 accounts were properly prepared and materially accurate. We didn't identify any material weaknesses. However, we identified some issues during the audit which were properly responded to. And that resulted in a £102,000 adjustment in the accounts. So it's unqualified audit opinion. Now, I do want to highlight that there is a typo in the report. And the typo is quite a material typo. So I'm going to
be honest.
So yeah, so it's better to be honest. So this relates to paragraph 26. And the wording is there were issues warranting a report. And it should have read there were no issues. So it's quite a significant amendment. So what I suggest is that we note that there's an error in the minutes today. We'll reissue the report, and then when we publish it on our website, we'll make sure that the amendments made to the report.
Such a little word.
But fundamental.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then turning to the performance audit work, our value for money work during the year included the structured assessment report and also some work around savings. So in terms of the structured assessment, it considers corporate governance, systems of assurance, organisational planning, and financial management. So I'm not going to go into those. I'll take the report as read, but overall, the findings across those areas were positive. But we did identify a small number of areas where we've recommended improvement. Just highlighting a couple. One related really to the session that Brogan did first thing this morning, which was about the board receiving feedback through student and trainee stories. I think that's a really sort of sound basis. And we know in wider NHS bodies, they have patient stories, and I think this is a useful mechanism just really to sort of ground yourself around the board into sort of what's happening out in the field there.
And we have a plan.
You have a plan. And the other area I just wanted to highlight was really relating to planning, and that's about having a stronger focus on the impact and benefits of the actions that you're intending to achieve through the plan. And I think as a sort of an organisation which is a strategic enabler for the wider NHS, you monitor your deliverables and you can say, well, okay, well, this is how far we've progressed in terms of delivering those. But then if you stand back for that, say, right, well, what is actually that achieving? And in a world where there is less money and you're deciding and prioritising where to invest your energy, that's a really important thing to be able to go, right, okay, well, actually, as a result of this, we know we're having an impact. Or if we're not, do we still want to invest in that area? So beyond that, the other main report in the annual audit report is on savings arrangements. And that work found that the overall arrangements were good, but of course they're largely dependent, as mentioned earlier, and linked to the delivery of the education and training plan. So there's that dependency in between the two. So we recognise that sort of in the past, sometimes under delivery has achieved a greater degree of savings, but obviously going forward, that's a bit more problematic for you. So there's something, I guess, that you're going to have to navigate, because the education and training plan will allow you to make a certain degree of savings, but of course you've got your own corporate expenses as well. So other than that, basically I'd like to thank really for the ongoing relationship. It's something we sort of do routinely, where we present these sorts of reports and just say, you know, we've had a good working relationship, but it has been really, really good. So it is very much a sincere sort of message here that we really do appreciate the engagement, and really we do have those honest discussions. I think that's important. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Jane, as chair of audit and assurance, do you want to come in?
Just to confirm that the audit committee has considered both of these papers in advance of the board meeting. We had a good discussion around them. We also considered the organisational response, which is included in the structured assessment paper, and we were content.
So, are there any questions or comments? It's great to have unqualified candidates. And from what you say, the relationship with the officers that you enjoy is appropriate and productive.
And we get a good response as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I think you heard a good debate about the report that the Audit Office provided on workforce planning. I think for me, this is a very important relationship. And learning lessons from other organisations where things have gone less well and how we can improve will always be something that we will be very keen to be involved with. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm asking us to note the Audit Wales Annual Audit Report 24 and note the Audit Wales Structured Assessment. Yeah, thank you very much. We now go on to agenda item 4.6, and that's the risk appetite. David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, papur yn gofyn gymeradwyeth wedi hon. Mae'r bwrdd yn adolygu a chymrydwyo gofben sy'n amnesu ein brodrwydd derbyn risg at garwch. Byddwch yn nodi yn unol â'r trafodaethau ac arwydd yn y cyfarfod datblygu'r bwrdd mewn ysbrydol yn bod ni'n awgrymu un gwelliant yn unig, ac mae'r gwelliant hynny yn ymwneud gyda risg o ran garwch i 10, a mae hynny'n ymwneud gyda defnydd o adnoddau, a dyn ni wedi cynnig y gwelliant fel bod y defnydd yn adlewyrchu setlled ariannol ar gyfer eleni. Felly, bydd gofyn i'r Office Gymraeg i ystyried y dogfen ac i gymeradwyo yr dogfen diwydiedig sydd hwn yn atodol.
Diolch, David. I know board members will have been actively involved in this, and I'm asking you to approve the updated risk appetite and risk tolerance document unless there are issues you want to raise.
Can I just ask a query in terms of the risks 10 and 9? There's both refer to financial risk, but a slightly different wording. So I don't know whether the references in 9 on financial risk needs to be changed. It's slightly inconsistent with 10 now because you're in 10 you're now going to moderates. The other one's low.
Yeah, this I suppose it's achieving the balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got a statutory duty to live within our financial means. So in some respects, you've got no tolerance around that, have you? But I think the sort of the discussion that we've had as a board around moderate financial risk is recognising that in previous years we've probably had lots of financial flexibility that's gotten much tighter now. But actually, I think as an ambitious organisation, we actually want to make progress on delivering a range of priorities, and there will always be a level of financial risk in doing that. And I think Dawn's question earlier about stress testing means that actually we do go into the year, even though we set a balanced financial plan, knowing that there are things that some things that are perhaps within our influence but not controlled financially, but that we're prepared to accept that as a board.
I think the answer, Alan, is a good question. See if you need to ask the same question after we've had a one-to-one in your induction period, right? Because there are various decision points which if we left it to the decision point, for instance, by government or ministers to make, the horse is already bolted in certain things, and we have to look at the wider interest and threat. So I'll talk you through some of that, and I'm sure officers will highlight that. But the board has had to live with taking risks with, for instance, recruitment training plans that are bolted into UK-wide processes, for instance.
And I've got no problem with taking risks. And I can remember the Auditor General Paul used to go on about taking appropriate risk, and you'd expect that organisations to do, so you're aware of what you're doing and everything else. So I have no problem with it. It's just like the wording is all.
Okay, well, we'll revisit that after we've had those conversations, right? We'll take your spin on that. Okay. Right. So under that circumstance, then can I ask you to approve the updated risk register and risk tolerance document, which is always under review anyway. Okay, thank you. Review of standing orders.
Ia, yn fras iawn, Cadeirydd, felly be da ni'n cynnig yma ydy man newid ar gyfer cylch gorffwyl ein pwyllgor tal y dylere, yr Arts Committee. Mae'r newidiadau wedi cael ei ystyried a'i cefnogi gan y pwyllgor ansawdd yn y gwlad o'r mwyn Chwefror. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgolch yma bod chi'n cymeradwyo newid ar gyfer cylch gorffwyl yr Arts Committee. Os wedi amlynellu yn y papur. A be mae'r newid wedi gwneud ydy galluogi'r pwyllgor i ystyried ceisiadau neu enwebiadau ar gyfer amser.
Both the guide, yes, or us. No, so, are there any questions or comments about the standing orders changes? Okay, so I'm asking you, you've reviewed them, and I'm asking you to approve the proposed amendment of the terms of reference to the Rants Committee, which forms a part of HEIW's standing orders appendix 1. You approve? Thank you. Board self-assessment outcome and action plan.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Felly mae'r papur yma'n edrych ymlaen ac yn edrych yn ôl. Felly, o ran yr elfen sy'n edrych yn ôl, mae adroddiad yn amlynellu'r gynnydd arni pwys yn erbyn cynllun gwaith hunan asesiad, Studios 23, 24. Mae'n braf gallu adrodd bod ein fod wedi cwblhau o gweithred wedi amlynellu yn y cynllun. O ran yr elfen o'r papur sy'n edrych ymlaen, byddwch yn gweld ei bod ni'n amlynellu y cynllun gwaith ar gyfer y flwyddyn sydd i ddod. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgolch yma bod y bwrdd yn nodi'r adroddiad ac yn cymeradwy'r cynllun ar gyfer y flwyddyn 2026.
Any comments? John?
Just to say, Chair, I welcome the focus area 3 performance report on lesson learned. The statement there, which reflects conversations that we've had at board previously around developing further role evaluation methodology. So that we're looking at impact and we're looking at objective measurement of what we're doing. Okay.
The only thing I know which would be useful on the action plan is the date.
Sorry,
the date. You know, the target date that we want it off the plan. That's anything that help people.
Okay, so colleagues, I'm asking you to note the progress made against the self-assessment plan and approve the 24-25 board self-assessment actions as outlined in the proposal paragraph 3.2 appendix. Yes, thank you very much. And now we go on to agenda item 4.9, which is to receive key issue reports from the Audit and Assurance Committee and from the Education Commissioning Quality Committee. So, Jane, do you want to say anything in the open session?
Just to say, Chair, that this paper describes what we discussed at the last Audit Committee meeting. It is a matter for note. There are no matters for escalation to the board. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? So I'm asking you to note the content of the report from the Chair of Audit and Assurance Committee and note the Audit and Assurance Committee recommended that the board approve the proposed amendments to HEIW standing orders. And the recommendation is considered as we've just done. So you're happy? Thank you so much. Education Commissioning Quality Committee, Donna?
Thank you, Chair. Again, this paper for noting, we've all read it, so it outlines the discussions that were undertaken at the last Education Commission policy meeting held at the beginning of March. The one thing I will pull out, though, however, is obviously in this report we're suggesting approval of the proposed process of contract extensions, which was brought to the committee. That only applies to contracts which are within their overall contract period where there's an option to extend. It outlined a series of criteria which will be considered, and the recommendation is that the exec team will utilise those in making it to a proposal about what they'll do about extension, and then there'll be info to ECQC. I think we've also got an opportunity with a contract coming up for that to have a review of its effectiveness about the proposal, but we are asked here to approve the proposed process.
Any questions for Donna? No, so note the content of the report from the chair of ECQC, and note that the Education Commission and Quality Committee considered and supported the proposed process for contracting extensions and approve the proposed process for contract extensions. Yes, thank you very much. I now come to 4.1, which is our in-committee decisions, and I'm asking you to note the report for information, and then very importantly consider the corporate risk register. Are there any perspectives from today, Doc?
Thank you, Chair. So I note the paper, very useful, and welcome the update that we've received from previous corporate risk register. Can I ask some questions? In terms of risk 15, without breaching any EMI previously declared interest, when are we likely to have scenario planning presented to the board in terms of the risk around higher education? It talks about scenario planning in a few papers that we've received today, and again for board assurance, when is that likely to come? In terms of risk 4, it notes that the fill rates are stable, amber and stable. I'm not sure about that. Is it stable? That's all the question. Because the picture that we're presenting in terms of the fill rates, they seem to be deteriorating. And the last one is risk 13. I note within that the chief executive and our executive officer for nursing, health professions and et al. Has been on 2 occasions, I think, to Welsh Government with regards to our role in terms of the next phase for RNA implementation, and still, as an organisation, we don't know where we are. We could have an update, please. Or should that risk be amended?
Okay, so who's picking up the fill rate and the scenario planning?
Timeline on the part of university issue, isn't it? Which we did with this, that we want.
Yeah.
So on that full timeline.
So we're hoping to find something from me, and the chair has also offered to meeting or then in fact it's fine.
It's all right.
Right. Fill rates?
And fill rates, yeah, it's a very challenging situation that we're operating in. When we take into consideration the number of applicants, and the number of applicants is declining, and our fill rates are, it's challenging. And you've made a comment earlier about whether enough work is being done, and that is a useful challenge. I think that there's this risk hovers around our amber red at the moment. I think that because of the opportunity we've got through the Cardiff University situation, it may well be that we see an opportunity to have an increase in the fill rate, so an opportunity to address some of the issues we face because of structural changes. But it's a point well made, and that's a risk we have to be really cognizant because it's a challenging landscape.
Well, I suggest, Chair, in light of what we've been told, that risk, if it's hovering from amber to red, it can't be stable. The trend is suggested to be looked at.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, particularly in light of what we now know about the March cohort. Yeah, just probably mention. I think during the report and probably wasn't some that, but that's part of that. Yeah.
So we consider reflecting that. Yeah. So final thing.
RNA.
RNA is in your meeting.
So yes, so we have actually considered this particular risk at the executive team recently, and because it's now actually featured that you within the remit letter, obviously that's now reflected that you within how we assess this particular risk. So therefore, that's given some clarity in terms of actually that yes, the chief minister is asking for that to be taken forward. However, we are still awaiting some clarity on some of the elements within that plan in order how we actually take it forward. That was reflected with the IQPD meeting we had. So that was reflected by Welsh Government that meeting was still outstanding and they would actually be pursuing that with us. So that's the latest decision as we carry.
And also, I think at one point we thought there was an agency to introduce the role this year.
Yeah,
so that's been revised in the context of everything else, and so it's not a burning issue to introduce that this year now. So yeah,
I think we're expecting to probably influence that and actually include some work actually in the next iteration, the next education changes plan. That's why that was, and the risk has been suggested it was reduced in light of all those aspects.
I really like this book of risk.
Tell I.
Yeah. It does get you to the nub of it. Yes. And there's nothing like being aware. There's a report I'll share with you that was published yesterday, which is a comparison of lessons learned from inquiries. Not knowing where you are, or ignoring when you know something, is a common feature where systems go pear-shaped. So thank you very much, everybody. There are actions now to around the corporate risk register. Okay, so with that, I'll bring this meeting to an end. We did have an in-committee session of the board this morning prior to the open board meeting, and I look forward to seeing everybody, apart from those who are on the Orient Express, at the board development session on the 24th of April, and held here, and the next open board meeting will be the 29th of May, again held here. Diolch o galon. Thank you very much. I apologise that we are 15 minutes late.